This is English Voiceover in Asia, Episode 1. I'm your host, Yui Haruhara, but you may know me better as Yui Senpai on YouTube. Welcome to the inaugural episode of a very special podcast I've been working on now for over a year. Over the course of my YouTube career, I've taken a strong interest in Asian-made English dubs. Fans often dismiss these dubs as just being the quote-unquote poor man's version of a show. But I disagree. Sure, they're not as refined as North American dubs, which have the money and time to afford a more polished product, but there's a sense of fascination behind these other projects made in places like Hong Kong, Singapore, and Japan. Regardless of quality, Asian-made English dubs and projects are still part of someone's childhood, someone's resume, someone's legacy, and they also play a role in the history of a series in the English language, as some of these dubs or projects are one of, if not the first version of the property to be in English. The history of foreign franchises in English sometimes go beyond dubs, though. Some projects are recorded in Japan, but in English, such as video games like F-Zero GX. So the scope of this podcast is covering any project to be recorded in English. There are still a lot of unanswered questions about how these dubs and projects come to be, how they're produced, and what struggles the teams behind them face during production. Additionally, many of the actors and staff behind these projects have their stories untold. I could make a podcast interviewing anime dub superstars like KG Tang, Matt Mercer, and Chris Sabat, but I wanted to put a spotlight on people that have done voice work in Asia like Christian Lee, Eric Kelso, and Michael Pizzuto. Over the course of this podcast, you'll hear from 9 different people that have done voice work, voice direction, or script writing in Asia. And hopefully a very special 10th episode if I can land my dream interview. Stay tuned on social media for that announcement maybe. You'll learn about the similarities and differences between working on a project in America versus working on a project in Asia. Not all these people have worked on dubs, as some have done original projects that are in English, characters that speak English in a show, or TV/radio commercials in English. Perhaps by the end of this podcast, you'll have a newfound appreciation, or at least an understanding, of English projects that originate in Asia. You'll learn about the history of these people, how they wound up in Asian countries if they weren't born there, where they are now, and what working on a project in Asia is like. Each country is different in some way, so we'll be hearing from people that work or have worked in Hong Kong, Japan, and Singapore. And along the way, you'll learn about some unique info that you won't find elsewhere, like an obscure dub of a certain renowned animation studio's movie about a pig that flies airplanes. Wink wink. Without further ado, here's our first guest on this podcast.
Hi everyone, I'm Christian Lee, and I guess I'm known to Yui as one of the voiceover actors as well as directors for the Odex Voiceover Unlimited recordings of Doraemon and One Piece. That was the one I worked on, as well as Yu-Gi-Oh!, which I voiced.
If you're an actor that has worked in Asia and would like to be a guest on the podcast, please send an email to yuiharuhara@gmail.com. If you're a listener and would like to know when I have upcoming guests, please follow me on Twitter @yuiharuhara or stay tuned to my YouTube community tab. From there, you'll be able to ask guests questions that may be featured in their interview. Until next time, take care.